Today's topic of discussion is cataract. Before talking about cataract, I would like to discuss a little of anatomy of the lens. So this is the rough eye diagram. So we all know that the eye is an ablate spheroid in shape. Now talking about the anatomy of the lens, we can see that the lens is an anterior pole and a posterior pole, an anterior capsule and a posterior capsule, an equator passing from the center. It also has an anterior epithelium but no posterior epithelium. The nucleus is almost at the center. It is more dense as compared to the cortex. Now, it is very important to note that the anterior epithelium is changing from cuboidal epithelium to columnar epithelium while it is moving towards the equator. Now, if you see, I have drawn the thickness of the capsule differently. That is actually the actual thickness of the capsules in the lens. So, the anterior capsule has an average thickness. The maximum thickness of the capsule is at the equator, and the posterior capsule is the thinnest. The four important features to discuss about lens is there is transparency, avascularity, a crystalline nature, and relative dehydration. Now what it means is that there is a pump, there is a sodium potassium pump. So this sodium potassium pump throws 3 sodium outside the lens and 2 potassium into the lens. Now while it is throwing 3 sodium outside the lens, it is also throwing water outside the lens. So when you compare it with the eyeball, it shows relative dehydration. Now moving on to the topic of today, which is the cataract. A cataract is actually a Greek word. It is derived from a Greek word called as cataractes, which means waterfall. Waterfall means water. So here we refer to something called as the overhydration. Now, when there is defect in the pump or due to some other contributing factors, there will be overhydration in the lens, so more water in the lens, leading to opacification of the lens and its capsule. Now, this opacification is known as the cataract. Now, the most important part under cataract is its classification. The most simple classification is the etiological classification. Now we can divide cataract into congenital or developmental cataract and acquired cataract. We will further discuss it in the session, how we further classify the congenital and the acquired cataracts. Now the second and the most important classification is the morphological classification. So we can see the lens, we can see the nucleus. The opacification of the nucleus will be called as the nuclear cataract. If you see the yellow parts, you can see the anterior polar cataract and the posterior polar cataract. Next comes the pink part, which is the anterior capsular cataract and a posterior capsular cataract. When you go a little towards inside, there is a blue color, light blue color, which is the anterior subcapsular cataract and a posterior subcapsular cataract. Now at the apex, at the top, we can see a green color, which is the coronary or the peripheral cortical cataract. And then we can see a purple color line, which is the anterior cortical cataract. Now we can see a dark blue line along, like outside the nucleus, along kind of nucleus. So that is the lamellar cataract. And one at the nucleus that we already said is the nuclear cataract. Now that completes the discussion of the general properties of a cataract. Moving on to the first type of cataract that we are going to discuss is the congenital cataract. Now, the etiology is simple. 1/3 cases are idiopathic, 1/3 hereditary, and 1/3 maternal and fetal causes. Now, moving on to the maternal causes, we have a mnemonic, MIRD. We have a bird, this is mold. So, we have malnutrition, infections like torch infections, R for radiation, and D for drugs. Under fetal causes, we have a mnemonic A, B, C, D, M, which means A for anoxia, B for birth trauma, C for congenital anomalies, D for diseases of metabolism and developmental cataract due to ocular diseases, and M for malnutrition. The clinical types include congenital capsular cataracts, which can further be divided into anterior type and posterior type. The polar cataract, which is further divided into anterior type and posterior type. The congenital nuclear cataracts, which includes cataracta pulverulenta, lamellar cataract, sutural and axial cataracts, and total nuclear cataract. And the fourth one is the generalized cataracts, which is the coronary type, blue dot cataract, the total congenital cataract, and congenital membranous cataract. So the first one that we are going to talk about is the congenital capsular cataract. So it includes an anterior and a posterior type. The anterior type is actually visually insignificant. The posterior type is rare and is associated with a persistent hyaloid artery irregularities. For those who don't know what is hyaloid artery, it is basically an manifestation in the intrauterine life, and before birth this hyaloid artery degenerates ideally, but if there are remnants left, it can lead to congenital capsular cataract. The second type we are going to discuss is the polar cataracts. So we saw that the lens has an anterior pole and a posterior pole. So also it will have an anterior polar cataract and a posterior polar cataract. Under anterior polar cataract, it is mainly due to delayed development of anterior chamber or corneal perforation. The morphological types include thickened white plaque, anterior pyramidal tract, which is actually a cone-shaped cataract, and a reduplicated type of cataract, which is showing the imprint opacity. Posterior type is actually small circular circumscribed opacity on the posterior pole. So it is associated with THPV syndrome, posterior lenticuloris, and Mittendorf dot. Now, Mittendorf dot is actually another name for persistent hyaloid artery remnants. Two forms that we see in posterior type include the stationary type and the progressive type. The progressive type here shows the characteristic onion hole appearance. So we can see onion hole appearance in the image. Moving on to the congenital nuclear cataracts. Under congenital nuclear cataracts, the first type we have is the cataracta centralis pulverulenta. Now it is a bilateral cataract associated with a genetic trait, dominant one, which causes inhibition of the lens development leading to embryonic nuclear cataract. Very important thing to remember here is that it is a visually insignificant cataract, which means that it does not cause visual impairment. Now, the term pulverulenta means powdery. So the opacity is powdery, small, rounded in the center of the lens. The second type here is the lamellar or the zonular cataract. The most important here is that it is the most common visually significant congenital cataract. The etiology here can be genetic and environmental. Genetic because it is a familial autosomal dominant, and environmental which is due to vitamin D deficiency, hypocalcemia, or maternal rubella infection during the 7th or the 8th week of gestation. The clinical features include bilateral opacities. So we can see here in the picture that the opacities show spokes of wheel or rider's appearance, and 2 rings of opacities can be seen. The third type is the sutural or the axial types. Again, a bilateral type of cataract, mild effect on the vision. We can generally see punctate opacities, but depending upon the shape of the opacity, we can further classify it as floriform cataract, which means petal-like opacity, coralliform cataract, spindle shaped, spear shaped, which is showing crystalline needles, anterior axial embryonic cataract, which is shown in the image, and dendritic sutural cataract. The fourth type is the total nuclear cataract, which is again a bilateral type, non-progressive, and we can see dense, chalky, white central opacity. The last type of congenital cataracts is the generalized cataract. So here we can see is the coronary cataract. So you can see multiple opacities which are arranged in a radial fashion. Now that is the coronary cataract. The second type is the blue dot or cataracta punctata caerulea type of cataract, which is actually the most common type of congenital cataract. So we can see blue dot punctate opacities. We can see it in the image as well. And the third type we see is the total congenital cataract. Again, we divide this into rubella cataract and rubella syndrome. And the rubella cataract is basically a pearly white nuclear cataract or a congenital Morgagnian cataract. Rubella syndrome is actually a triad of three defects, that is ocular defects, ear defects and heart defects. Under ocular defects, we have the congenital cataract, we have the salt and pepper chorioretinopathy, microphthalmos, cloudy cornea and poorly dilating pupil. Under ear defects, we have deafness, and under heart defects, we have PDA, pulmonary stenosis, ventricular septal defects. So this is the image for the total congenital cataract. The fourth and the last type of cataract we have is the congenital membranous cataract. So total or partial absorption of the congenital cataract leads to the formation of the membranous cataract. And the formation of the membranous cataract is in association with the Hallermann-Streiff-François syndrome.